thank you very much for attending. I'm going to turn it over to Josh Ford from Nationwide. Thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate that introduction there, Neil. Can you still hear me loud and clear?
Yes.
Awesome. Ever popular sound check. So I do appreciate everyone joining us this morning for probably the next 15 to 20 minutes just to talk and learn about something that's very important, and that's long-term care planning. As Neil mentioned to you, I am Josh Ford. I am the Nationwide specialist when it comes to long-term care. But today's conversation will not be focused on any sort of products or selling anything. We just want this to be purely educational so that you understand what's coming. The thing about long-term care planning is a lot of us don't really think about it. We don't really put in the time to have that conversation with our families. But one thing that we do know is that we all are going to get older, and that there's additional things that happen to us as we age. One of those is needing some sort of long-term care or just some sort of help, as we do get older. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to talk through just a handful of slides from a presentation that we have, really showing the importance of this conversation. So the way that we're going to, let's see. Here we go. Perfect. So the way that we're going to approach this conversation today is we're going to talk about three main things. We're going to talk about what long-term care is. What does this word mean? How does it apply to us? What are the realities when we hear long-term care? Secondly, we're going to approach why it's important. Why do we care? Why is Neil having this conversation with us? Why is the team bringing this to your attention? And then thirdly, we'll just talk about some options, some ways that you can solve this problem that will help you to identify, just to be sure that you can retire with your assets still in check and feel comfortable about the decisions that are being made. Of course, everything here is going to be completely educational. Nothing should be taken as a recommendation. But let's start with, what is long-term care? That's the big looming question. And I would like everyone who is listening just to take 1 second, close your eyes, and think, when I say long-term care, what do you see? I want you to think about the person, where they are, maybe the condition of their health. Really think about that mental image that you create when you hear the words long-term care. For many of us, I would bet that when we think about LTC or long-term care, we think about a really elderly person, maybe even in a nursing home, someone who may be wheelchair bound and really near the end of their life cycle. And while that's certainly a part of what long-term care is, that's the overwhelming minority of what LTC really is. Long-term care is simply what happens when we age. As we do get older, as we begin to have a few more limitations, we start to experience long-term care. Being with a carrier like Nationwide, we understand that we have long-term care data, not fictional data, not something that is made up in the media. This is something that is real from a very large carrier. As we look at our own experience with long-term care as a company, only 14% of all the individuals that own our policies are in nursing homes. 14%. That means the other 86%, the overwhelming majority of individuals that we personally have on record, are not in nursing homes. So when we think long-term care, again, nursing home is certainly part of it, but that is a very small piece of the conversation. When we talk about long-term care, what we're really talking about is being able to keep you home safely as you age. And there's really three places that the care can take place. Again, there is the community care, the nursing homes and assisted living. But the overwhelming majority of the time, long-term care takes place in your home. And it's done either by some sort of home health aide, maybe a nurse that comes in to help out, or by family members. And let's just take a second to think. If you and I get sick today, let's say we come down with something like the flu, something that will likely recover from very short term, maybe a week, who's going to be the people or the person doing the heavy lifting? Who's going to go to the drugstore and get us medicine? Who's going to cook for us? Who's going to help us get around? Who's going to bring us that nice hot tea and cough drops? That's going to be more than likely our friends and family members, maybe our spouses, whoever it is that we live with. As we age and begin to have other conditions, osteoarthritis, maybe even dementia, the burden still falls down on those family members. So again, when we talk about what long-term care is, long-term care isn't us trying to prepare you for a nursing home. Long-term care is us trying to prepare you to stay at home and to be sure that there's some sort of plan in place to alleviate the burden that you can potentially place on your loved ones. And there's a standardized definition for long-term care. And I don't expect everyone to remember this, but when we think about what long-term care is, it's either A, someone who has a cognitive impairment, Alzheimer's or dementia, right? A lot of us have seen. Or it's if you need help with 2 of the 6 things that are listed at the bottom of your screen. These things are known as the ADLs, or activities of daily living. And if we think about these things, these are really the first few things you do in the morning. And we'll kind of walk through what I mean by that. So these ADLs are bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, incontinence, and eating. So all of us, let's say myself, for example, I woke up this morning, I got out of bed, I walked to the restroom, right? That is transferring. I used the bathroom, took a shower. That is bathing, and that's toileting. I went downstairs, got myself a coffee, got myself some eggs. That's eating. And so for some of us who have to go out to the office, you drive yourselves to work, that's transferring. So if something happens that limits your ability to do 2 of those 6 things, that's a long-term care situation. And it doesn't matter how old you are, or where you are in your life. If something were to happen to you, even if it's relatively short term, it is considered an LTC event and can be very costly. I'll use myself as an example. Last year, I had to get knee surgery. And at the age of 28, I was out for about 9 months. Needed assistance with really every facet of my life. And that is something that even as a younger individual in the grand scheme of things, I experienced a long-term care event. And let's think about the things that you may be doing. Maybe going on a skiing trip, maybe going hiking, playing with the grandkids, maybe doing exercise. If something were to happen where there was an unforeseen accident, maybe you go skiing, you break your femur, you're out for a year, that's a long-term care event. During that year, you're going to need to pay for the assistance that the nurses are going to bring. Someone's going to have to help you get around. Someone's going to have to drive you around. Your spouse or family members may not be able to do so. They're taking care of their own careers and their own lives. So you're going to have to hire someone to do that, and that will cost. So again, long-term care is just needing some assistance. And oftentimes, anyone who's sitting here with a spouse or a family member close, I would like for you to look at them and ask the question, well, if I need help, are you going to do it? Are you going to be able to pick me up and take me in and out of the bathtub? Are you going to wipe me, maybe change my diapers? Is that something that you can do? And is it something that you want to do every single day? And even though our friends and family members certainly love us and they care for us, as we age, there's just certain things that we are not able to do. Into your 70s and maybe even 80s, when you may start to need long-term care, even if your spouse may want to help you do these things, they just simply may not be able to carry you out the tub and carry you up and down the stairs. And that is where planning effectively to have someone come do those things is very, very important. At Nationwide, we certainly understand that you want to stay home. So when we think about long-term care, again, it's not nursing home planning. We don't want you to be in a nursing home. You don't want to be in a nursing home, right? 80% of our clients have self-reported to us that they want to be at home when they experience care. Similar again, if I get sick, I get the flu today, I don't want to go somewhere else and have someone take care of me. I want to be home. I want to sleep in my own bed, use my own shower, eat my own food. And when we think about long-term care planning, this is the same thing that we're trying to help you plan for. So that is what long-term care was. Very extensive background, but the key takeaways that I want you to have is, again, long-term care is not nursing home planning. We don't want you to go to a nursing home. Your family doesn't want you to go to a nursing home. You don't want to go to a nursing home. So what we really want you to do is to plan to stay home. Long-term care planning is also alleviating stress from family members, right? Even if our family members want to care for us and maybe they have that desire, as they age, they just simply may be unable to do so. And last but not least, long-term care is something that happens to us at any point. It may be something that happens when we're older, maybe Alzheimer's, dementia, arthritis, or it can be something, if you're anything like me, you're physically active and you just have an accident. You're out for 9 months to a year, you need some assistance. All those things are LTC. The elderly person in the nursing home is not what long-term care really is. So now let's transition into why it's important to talk about long-term care. And we'll approach this conversation really from two angles. We'll talk about the individual financial costs that long-term care has, and then we'll talk about the family cost. And to talk about the financial costs, let's talk about what doesn't cover your long-term care needs. And these are the three most popular misconceptions that we get around the topic of long-term care. The first is that health insurance covers your LTC. That is just untrue. Your health insurance helps to cover the actual doctors. So if you go to the doctor, you need them to talk to you, evaluate you, do your blood work, whatever the case may be, your health insurance covers that. Your health insurance generally doesn't cover getting you to and from the doctor, right? That transferring aspect. It doesn't cover someone helping you to eat and bathe at home. It doesn't cover someone who may be changing your diapers. If we do get to that point, we don't want to think about ourselves in that way, but it does happen. Health insurance does not cover any of those expenses. Neither does Medicare. Medicare is really only designed to cover some of that medical portion of your life. Medicare may cover some of that first 100 days if you were to experience long-term care, but you would have to be in a hospital for at least 3 days prior. So if you aren't going to the hospital for 3 days prior, Medicare isn't going to provide anything and is really not designed for your LTC. And then lastly, Medicaid. This is the one that most folks think will have them covered, but really it is not designed for us. And what I mean by that is Medicaid is a government program really designed to help those who can't afford long-term care. Generally speaking, Medicaid will only kick in if you as an individual have $2,000 or less of assets. And if you're having these conversations, you have a financial advisor, which is how you found out about this conversation, you have way more than the $2,000 in assets. So Medicaid will not be there for you. And if there is a situation where you did qualify for Medicaid, well, that would be because you didn't plan for LTC, you needed care for a number of years, and you spent all of your retirement assets, not enjoying your life, but paying them to nurses and to assisted living facilities. And I know that's not the life that any of us want to live. So Medicaid is not going to be there for us. And if we think about the costs of paying for long-term care out of pocket, again, continuing on the financial side, these numbers on the screen are real. These are state or national averages, rather, for the cost of LTC. And for any of us on the line who have actually dealt with long-term care, seen a family or a friend deal with it, seeing them deal with their own families and friends, we understand that long-term care can be very, very costly. In today's dollars, Home health care, having someone come in to help you, runs about $5,000 per month. Nursing home coverage on the opposite end is somewhere around $11,000 per month. And these, are the costs that if you don't prepare for long-term care ahead of time, this is what your family is going to be facing. A very common saying is that you either have a plan by design or a plan by default. And this is what the plan by default looks like. Every single month for the end of your life, if you do need long-term care, you'll have to call over to your advisor and say, hey, we need $6,000 a month indefinitely. And those dollars are coming out of your portfolio. Those are the dollars that you have to decide, are you going to sell real estate? Are you going to liquidate assets? Are you going to take money from your kids' inheritance? Whatever the case may be, you're going to need to liquidate something in order to come up with these dollars. And this is something that can absolutely destroy your retirement plans. So we want to be sure that if you need the additional funds, that you have somewhere to pull it from and it's not your own portfolio, because this is something that can really drive down your overall value. And again, for those of us who may have spouses sitting next to us, if we need long-term care and they don't, their quality of life suffers. We're liquidating the portfolio faster. We're taking all the money and we're using it for ourselves. What that does to our spouse is it limits what they can do. And once we pass away, the amount of money that they have left to retire on is drained down so significantly that it may cause them to have a very tough time at the end of their own retirement. So when we think about the cost of long-term care, this is something that I want all of us to really think about and ask the question: if I need $5,000 a month tomorrow, somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 a month, where would I get it from and how would I get that? What is that going to do to my income tax bracket, right? What is that going to do to my retirement account? Now, really sit down and have that conversation with your partner or your spouse, your family, and really think about what it will do to them. So this is the financial cost of long-term care. The other cost that we can't really quantify as much is the family cost. Again, many of us may not have had that conversation around long-term care with our family members, but it's certainly something that we should do. Because again, if we get sick today, they take care of us. That's not going to change in 15, 20 years. And what we don't want to do is place the burden of caring for us for an extended period of time on one person. And I'll give you just one really quick example. A colleague of mine, his father needed long-term care. And there were 3 brothers. 2 brothers really stepped up and took care of dad. Again, dad wanted to stay home. They didn't have a long-term care plan. So the brothers just interchanged. They will go over 1 week at a time and take care of dad. The 3rd brother was always too busy. He never had time. He always had work or he had a vacation planned, and he really was there very sparingly. This continued on for the rest of the dad's life. When the dad passed away, guess who showed up at every single event? Who was there at the reading of the will? Who was there to go through the house and clean it out, looking for things? It was that 3rd brother. And that really ruined the relationship between the 3 brothers, because 2 of them stepped up, took time out their days, took money out their pockets, and took care of dad. That 3rd brother really only had time when he thought that he could benefit. And what we want to do when we talk about long-term care planning is have some sort of plan in place that we can hire professional care so that we don't have to put that potential strain on our children and our loved ones. So there's a huge family cost related to long-term care, and that's something we really can't quantify, or we really won't even know until it actually happens, and then it's far too late. So those are really the cost of long-term care. There's a financial cost, generally about $5,000 to $11,000 per month in today's dollars, and of course those prices are going up. And then there's a family cost. We run the risk of putting the burden on 1 or 2 people, building some potential resentment, and really tearing our families apart after we're gone. So now we'll talk briefly about what we can do to plan. We understand that long-term care is something that can happen to any of us, right? There's no age on it. There's no state that you have to live in to experience long-term care. It is just something that can happen to us at any point. And we understand that it can be costly both to our families and to our pockets. But what we can do is we can help plan for long-term care. We can have some dedicated resource or some dedicated, plan of attack should we need long-term care. And there's a few things that we should consider as we start that conversation. The first is, do you have the financial resources to stay at home? Have you really decked your chips to be sure that when you need care, you can be where you want to be? The second question, and I repeat this a few times, is how would your family members like to be involved? Are they able to, and do they want to actively care for you? Or do they want to act more in a managerial account role? Do they just want to pay the money and have someone do it? And then the last question is, how will providing care impact the family? And that's that family cost that we talked about. So once you really have the answer to these three things, and you've had this conversation with your spouse and family members, if they understand the importance of long-term care, then it may be time to reach out to your advisor and have a conversation around some type of LTC plan. And there's really three types of products that you could purchase if you do decide to purchase a product to cover your long-term care costs. The three types of products are standalone LTC, linked benefit, and then life insurance. And I'll give you a quick overview of each of those. Standalone long-term care policies, these generally make costs the least, and they act more so like your car insurance. You can pay a premium every single month. If you need the care, if you have the accident, well, the company would pay out for that accident. But if you never needed long-term care, let's say you lived until 105 and then you passed away in your sleep, right? That company would keep your premiums. There's no guarantees, there's no money back feature on a lot of those. But again, it does have the lowest overall cost. So that's the first potential option. More budget friendly than some of the others may be. The second option, looking to the left of your screen, is life insurance with a long-term care rider. And this option is a life insurance policy, right? So you pay a premium that's prefixed. It provides a death benefit. If you passed away, there will be money going back to your family. So the company's not just keeping it. And then you can add on this long-term care rider, or this living benefit rider, that allows you to spend that death benefit while you're alive. So instead of passing on all the money to your heirs, you can spend some of that money and pass on the remainder to your heirs. So this can be a good option. It's a little bit more expensive than a standalone LTC policy because there are guarantees and there's a death benefit associated with it. And then there's a middle ground called linked benefit policies. It is a little bit more expensive than the standalone contracts, but not as costly as the life insurance policies with the rider. But they are life insurance by design. So if you're looking for something that is guaranteed, you know exactly how much money you would spend on it, you know exactly what you're going to get back, it's more like an investment than a premium. Those linked benefit policies may be a good choice for you. And the number one thing to remember, I would say the two big things to remember about all three of these options is that, one, they are generally tax-free. So instead of liquidating assets, selling something from your portfolio and paying tax on it, if you did purchase a long-term care contract, those are tax-free distributions. So your retirement assets are safe, they are protected, and your tax bracket down the road won't go up by needing to liquidate assets. That's the number one thing. The second thing is that regardless of the choice that you make, if you do choose to purchase a policy, all three of these act as a shield for your retirement assets and your family. Your family won't have to care for you. They won't have to spend money out of pocket. You won't be liquidating all the money from your portfolio to take care of yourself, leaving your spouse without assets. Planning for long-term care with any of these three types of products can be a phenomenal way to help protect what you hold dear. So I know we talked about a lot today, but I'll summarize really the content of the conversation. One, again, long-term care is not death and dying. It is not just an elderly person in a nursing home. Long-term care is something that can happen to any of us. And more often than not, it happens outside of a nursing home, and it is done by your friends and family members. You know, those are the ones who generally take care of you if you don't have a plan in place. 2, there are costs associated with long-term care. There's some very real financial costs. $5,000 to $10,000 a month, or $5,000 to $11,000 per month. That can be a very big drag on your finances. And even if you are a client who has planned very well for retirement, you know, having to liquidate $11,000 a month for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that will put a dent in your retirement assets. It also impacts your family, right? So there are some costs associated with long-term care. But absolutely, there are ways to plan for long-term care. Have that conversation with your advisor. There are certain types of long-term care policies that you can purchase. And purchasing LTC really is a shield to help protect all the things that you love and all the things that you have built. So that really concludes the content that I had prepared for today. I will turn it back over to Neil for any closing remarks.
Josh, thank you very much. That was extremely helpful in helping us understand the implications of long-term care needs. And I'll reiterate that long-term care planning typically takes place when we're in our 50s and 60s. It does not take place when we're 80 and 90. That when you wait that long, there's some serious issues. Each of the Secure Planning Group advisors is well-versed in long-term care planning. We encourage you to reach out to your advisor and have them walk this type of planning through with you. It would be very helpful for you and your family. So once again, thank you for attending Secure Planning Group's July webinar, and look for our 4th and final webinar. Our September webinar with Medicare, and that will be another interesting topic. But Josh, thanks again, and everybody have a great day. Take care.
Take care.